A lot of you know that I like Rob Renfroe and Tom Lambrecht. They've both done interviews with me, but that's not why I like them. I like them because they've labored for the Lord within the Methodist camp for a long time. I cut my teeth in ministry starting in 2012 when both of these guys were leading Good News, where, if you don't know what Good News is, it's not just a magazine, although they do produce a magazine, but they also have published online articles. They've done a lot to keep Methodists informed about developments in the United Methodist Church, to think theologically through uh, things that the bishops have done, the general commissions have done, and they've helped people at General Conference to figure out how they want to vote according to their values. They've been collaborators. They've been information disseminators, and now they're closing up shop. So they put out an article called A Parting Thank You that I wanted to read through and just say some kind things about Rob and Tom, because we've been very blessed to have them. So this is the article. It went out on Friday, and let's read through. I think I can make this a little bigger. Nope. Good News was founded in 1967 to be a voice for scriptural Christianity within what would become, in 1968, the United Methodist Church. Now, 57 years later, our board of directors and our executive leadership team have determined it is time for Good News to conclude its work. So over the next few months, we will be in the process of closing our office, and one final edition of the magazine will be published after the General Conference of the Global Methodist Church this September. We will continue to publish the weekly perspective into the fall, and our website will continue to be available as an archive of Good News ministry and history. I think that's great news because they produced a lot of good content. By God's grace, Good News played an instrumental role in forming the Global Methodist Church and helping over 7,000 churches leave the UMC. We need to thank God for how He has used our efforts in the past and now step into the future He has for the Wesleyan Christians who are committed to the Lordship of Jesus Christ and the authority of the Bible. I became president of Good News in 2009, so Rob is writing that. Tom Lambrecht, after many years as a board member, board secretary, and board chair, moved to from Wisconsin to Texas and took on the role of vice president in 2011. We are writing this editorial together primarily to say thank you. Oh, I didn't think I'd get emotional about this, but I mean, these guys were such a big part of keeping me informed. It's just a sad thing. I mean, it's also a wonderful thing. I don't know. Earlier this summer, each of us transferred our ministerial credentials from the UMC to the GMC. We had remained within the UMC so that we might attend one final general conference and work on behalf of our African and other international friends who wanted the same opportunity to disaffiliate that we in the U.S. had been given. But each of us has now said goodbye to the UMC. Given all we have said and written, much of it is critical of the UMC. It may be surprising that what fills our hearts at this time is gratitude. We are immensely thankful for the lives and ministries God has given us, for the opportunities provided to us by the UMC. There is no higher calling on a human life than preaching the gospel of Jesus Christ and shepherding His people. For some reason that is difficult to fathom, God, in His grace, gave us the immense privilege of proclaiming His word and serving His church as pastors. For His calling on our lives and the opportunity to minister to the people, we shall be forever grateful. We were pastors within the UMC, each of us for over 40 years, Rob in East Texas and Tom in Wisconsin. It was the UMC that recognized our gifts, affirmed our calling, and allowed us to serve its congregations, welcoming us with open arms over 40 years ago. Maybe a decision some within the UMC have come to lament, but we are grateful for a church that made a place for us to be in ministry, to do the work of God, and to fulfill His calling on our lives. I think they're being genuine, and I think this is in very good taste. I'm so glad they wrote this. Even more, we're grateful to the UMC because it was there that we came to faith in Jesus Christ. For Rob, it was a summer youth director hired by FUMC Texas City, Texas in the summer of 1972. His name was Eddie Wills. It was the beauty of his relationship with Jesus that showed me that there was more to Christianity than going to church and being a good kid. and that caused me late one night to kneel by my bed and ask Jesus to come into my life. For Tom, it was a confirmation class led by a student pastor serving as an intern in 1968 at Memorial UMC in Greenfield, Wisconsin, where I grew up. His name was Jerry Klein, who worked at our church 1 year while studying at Garrett Evangelical Theological Seminary. The message of God's love and God's desire that I become a disciple. When we sang, "Oh Jesus, I have promised," on Confirmation Sunday, I gave my commitment to follow Jesus for a lifetime. He has never let me down. There's a well-known line that a year from now, you will be the same person you are today, except for the books you read and the people with whom you spend time. What's true of a year is also true of a lifetime, and we have known the best people. The best, because the UMC. Through our work to renew and reform the church, we were blessed to spend time with, learn from, be inspired and formed by many of the greats: Maxie Dunham, Bill Henson, Eddie Fox, John Ed Matheson, Jimmy Buskirk, Ira Galloway, Ed Robb Jr., Ed Robb III, Jim Heidinger, Billy Abraham, Kenneth Kinghorn, Gary Moore, Ben Witherington III, John Grenfell Jr., Riley Case, Pat Miller, and a host of others. There was a time when we were in awe to be in the same room as these giants of the faith, sitting in a corner, listening closely to what they said, hoping not to say anything foolish in their presence if called upon to speak. And later, as they passed the torch to us, we continued their work, so desperately wanting to make them proud. Many of them have gone to be with the Lord, while others have retired from active ministry, but none are gone from our hearts. For this blessing, we'll be forever grateful. I want to hold on to the sentiment of that paragraph and come back to it here in a bit. But now, as the GMC is being formed, we're forgetting that we still stand on the shoulders of others, even as we're starting a new thing. And so I think it's important for us to remember that. And like I said, I'll come back to it. The argument closes out with the article closes out with a couple more paragraphs, I think. How would the story of the UMC have played out if good news had never existed? If Charles Keyser had not written that first article, Methodism's Silent Minority, that gave so many Bible-believing Methodists a reason to stay in the church instead of giving up and walking away nearly 5 decades ago. If the original board members had not held national conferences that brought evangelicals together, in fact, created a movement. If they had not done the hard work for decades at general conference after general conference, if they had not been willing to suffer the slings and arrows, the false accusations, and the demeaning attacks of liberal and institutionalist church leaders back when the fight was truly difficult and often mean-spirited. If Jim Heidinger, a prince of the church with a gracious spirit and a backbone of steel, had not taken up the work after Keyser. How the story would have gone, we don't know, but we are sure of this. There would be no global Methodist church. The vast majority of traditionalists would have left years ago. The UMC would have gone radically progressive long before now, and whatever evangelical movement might have come out of it would at best be a mere shell of the GMC. So we are grateful for good news, grateful for its work, its influence, and its successes, and we are beyond grateful that God was gracious enough to allow us to help lead its efforts for the past 15 years. Following Chuck Keyser and Jim Heidinger, what an honor and a privilege God has given us. As we leave the UMC and as we conclude the work of good news, we look at our lives and we're reminded of the words of the psalmist, "Lord, you alone are my portion and my cup. You make my lot secure. The lines have fallen for me in pleasant places. Surely I have a delightful inheritance." I should say, there's one more paragraph. There are ways in which I have heaped, in the Bitter Medicine series, I blamed the failure of the UMC on conservatives who refused to fight in the UMC. And I just want to make clear, I don't put good news or the confessing movement leaders in that camp. I think they did their best to lead. And I think the failure of conservatives was on the grassroots level, not at the organizational level. And I think they're totally right to say that they formed a bulwark that was quite effective for many decades, and provided a way out that probably would not have been there without them and their advocacy and organization. Here's the conclusion of the article. The lines have fallen in pleasant places for us. We could not imagine better lives than the one God has given us, nor could we be more grateful. Grateful to the UMC that provided us the opportunity to be in ministry, to those who led us to faith in Christ, to our wives and children who upheld us in ministry, to the congregations that blessed us, to the men and women who inspired us, and to all of you who have supported us in the work of good news. Please know that you're dear to us, and we will forever be thankful to you. So I just want to publicly state, and I already have my sincere appreciation for Rob and Tom. Of course, Tom is going on to serve as the secretary of the General Conference of the GMC, and we're very blessed to have him. I haven't talked to Rob in a bit, so I don't know what he's doing. He might just be enjoying retirement for a bit, although the man's heart is for helping people. So I have no doubt that he's going to continue to be active in the local church and Comfort. Last I checked, he has a real heart for ministry with parents of children who have torn the family apart through addiction. And I've been meaning to schedule a conversation with him where we talk more about that kind of ministry, because I know it impacts a lot of people. But I wanted to acknowledge that they stood on the shoulders of other bold prayer warriors and warriors for the cause of biblical Christianity. And I think they serve just so faithfully. As they talk about the slings and arrows that came with public advocacy, it's very real. And I've only experienced just a small portion of it that they have. I stay in my little hole here in Nowata, and I don't get out very often. But these guys looked people in the face who hated them and who casted aspersions of them and scandalized them and blasphemed them. And they maintain their integrity throughout. They have something of an impeachable record in my book. If they've ever had a large moral failing in the midst of carrying out their duties, I'm totally unaware of it. And not only that, I'm hostile at this point to the notion that such a thing exists. Not that the two men are perfect, but that they have comported themselves with gravity and sobriety and righteousness. They knew what was at stake, and they were up to the task. And they have my appreciation and respect, and I think they should have yours as well. The other thing I wanted to say is I'm clearly different from them. I'm using a different medium. I'm doing video a lot more than they did. I'm writing less than they did. I did write something last week, and it made a big splash. It's gotten over 4,000 views at this point. It's affecting the conversations that delegates to the convening conference are having. It's getting a reaction from people at the top. And I do kind of see myself as similar to them. I love my tribe, and I want my tribe to do well, and I see things that I want to warn people about. And yes, there are people in the institution that are going to be threatened by that and see me as a provocateur or an antagonist. That's not really what I aim to be. I hope I don't have to be that. I don't want to be that. I just want to be a person that points towards biblical righteousness and keeps an eye on what's going on at the top, and where people don't suspect that I've been bought because I'm taking a paycheck from the structure. So I wanted to urge people who watch this later, if you think that I am taking up the mantle of good news, and that my speaking about good things in the GMC, but also warning about bad things or threats down the road, if you think that that is a helpful thing to have, right now it's just a one-man operation. I've really enjoyed it so far, and I want to grow it. So the place, you can support me in a number of different ways, but if you find that Good News is closing up shop and you still have that disposable income to support something that tries to maintain purity in the body outside of the official structure, I think that's needed. That's why I'm doing it. Then you might pray about supporting me. And so there are a number of places and ways you can do it. You can do it on Substack. You can do it on PlainSpoken. You can support directly my church. And so I'll make sure to put in the show notes when I publish this later the ways in which you can support me. And then, it's just fine if you think that I'm a different quantity and of different stuff and you don't want to support me. But I do think, I think this will be my closing thought. It would be very odd to believe that we're just going to leave all the problems behind, and now none of the things that were a threat before are going to be a threat now. I think Satan always guns for us, and there are just continual things to be wary of, and there are certain things that you can't see when you're on the inside. I think you need people on the outside to say what they see. So I wish that wasn't needed, but I think I have a low anthropology. I think that humans are just bent towards sinning continually, even in the church, and I just think we need to watch over one another in love. So I don't want to be seen as an antagonist. I want to say that again. I'm going to have to say that over and over. But I do want to serve in this role as kind of one keeping watch. And I think the reason why I've gotten such engagement is because people know that that's needed. So if you haven't started supporting me yet, you might consider doing so. And for those of you who do support me, I just want to thank you and tell you I know how much influence this thing is coming to have. And I'm aiming to comport myself with the same gravity and level of righteousness that Rob and Tom have. So even if they don't acknowledge me as the one upon whose mantle they're putting theirs, and I'm not asking for that, even so, I'm seeing them as my forerunners and going to try and live into their heritage in the best way possible, given the challenges of today. So anyway, God bless Rob and Tom. God, thank you for their ministry. God, thank you for good news. And bless this good work that they have begun now in the GMC. We ask these things in Jesus' name. Amen.